In this section, I want to talk about some of the new features that are available with regards to forms in HTML5. I've already created an HTML5 basic document structure here. Let's call this HTML5 forms, and let's put in our form tag. Now, as you remember, the form tag still has two required attributes: action, which we're just going to set to pound because we don't have a URL to process this, and method, which I almost always set to post. All right, let's do our closing form tag so we don't forget later. So many of the changes come with the types of form inputs that are available, and there's a couple of ones that I think are pretty exciting. Now, the problem with this is that many of these aren't available in all the browsers, or you're going to see different results in different browsers, and I'm going to demonstrate that here in a second. So let's try one of them. I'm going to do color input type equals color. You'll be pretty impressed with what this does. So let's say we ask the user to choose a color here. Go ahead and save. Now, if we look at this in Firefox, here's the result we get. We just get a plain old input box. So that's obviously not much of an improvement. Let's try it in Safari. Here comes in Safari. And in Safari, we get the same old thing, a blank input. All right, well, it's got to work in one of these, so let's go ahead and try Chrome. What do you think? You think Chrome's going to work? So we're loading Google's Chrome browser, and we've tried the input type equals color input, new HTML5 form feature. Let's see how we do in the Chrome browser. And let me drag it over here. Not too well. Ironically, what you'll find is most of these actually work in a browser called Opera. That may be a browser you've never heard of, but it was the first to implement many of these HTML5 form features. So here's what it's supposed to do. So it's a color chooser from which the user can choose a color, or even a color that's not inside one of those block boxes. Let's go ahead and choose this kind of mauve color here. I guess that's called mauve, right? So that's in our color chooser. So a very, very simple control, but one that was only available in HTML5. And you saw it doesn't work in Chrome, it doesn't work in Firefox or any of the other browsers. This is a feature that you're going to see implemented, I think, pretty soon in some of the other browsers, but really these HTML5 form features currently work best in the Opera browser. All right, so after we do color, let's try a different one. Let's go ahead and try asking for a date. So let's ask the user for their date of birth. Input type equals date. Name equals, we'll call it DOB. I'm going to save. Let's just look at it here in Opera. And in Opera, we get this very, very nice kind of widgetized type calendar here in which I can enter my birth date. I was born February 21st, not of 2011, but we won't tell you exactly what year it was. So it's well implemented in Opera. It gives you this very, very nice calendar widget. Again, new in HTML5, we click today, get today's date, etc. So far we've got the color and we've got the date. You want to see how the date does in some of the other browsers? Here we are in Firefox. Same thing, we've got that blank text box here, so not extremely useful. Let's try it in Chrome. I'm not going to test all of them in every browser, but there are some significant differences. Hey, look at that. So I actually find this to be semi-useless at this point, how they've implemented it in Chrome, especially if you're going for dates that are way far back, because I'm not going to click this 37,000 times to get back to my birthday or whatever it is. So this is fairly useless, although it does keep the dates kind of formatted well if you desire that. And then we'll check in Safari as well, just for the goof of it here. So in Safari, it has a slightly different useless implementation than Chrome. So far, I really like Opera's implementation best on these. All right, so we've taken a look at date. We also can do time. So, and I'm not trying to make any sense here with this form. I'm just trying to demonstrate something. So let's say time of appointment. Input type equals time. There's also combined date time fields that do roughly the same thing. Time of appointment. Let's say we're doing a calendar or something that certainly could be useful in the future once it's fully implemented. So we'll try it again in Opera. Bring our Opera browser to the front. And Opera has this type of up and down arrow implementation with the colon. So again, a better implementation than you're going to find in some of the other browsers. Implementation actually pretty similar in Chrome, Firefox. We've got nothing. And again, it may also depend on the version of the browser that you're using in order to get the particular value. Now, there's a couple that are there that really are more optimized towards mobile and mobile browsers, where you have a soft keyboard. That's the keyboard that displays on the screen that has various configurations. For example, let's ask the user for their email address. And let's also not forget to tell the user what we're asking for. Let's at the same time ask the user for their telephone number. So what happens is on a mobile browser, it brings up an optimized keyboard to enter this information. Remember, the mobile browser obviously much smaller than the browser you have on your desktop or laptop computer, so optimizations have to be made. So, for example, the email specialty keyboard has the @ sign visible. The telephone has like you'd see on a regular phone to ease the data, to make the data entry easy for the user. Let's see how these look in Opera. And kind of disappointing. You see standard inputs here where I could put my email address. But on a mobile browser, which is hard to show you on a screen capture, this would appear as an optimized data entry whatever. So this is optimized data entry whatever, an optimized data entry keyboard. All right. So we've got these new input fields. Now, I'm going to go ahead and add one more input field here, where I'm going to ask, for example, the user's age. And one of the neat things about HTML5 is we can set some new limits on these values. So here, with this particular text box, I can add attributes to set a maximum and minimum value, and this works for either numbers or dates. So let's set a minimum value of 0 and a maximum value of 115. I don't think there's anybody walking around who's much older than that. And instead of making this the input text type, I'm going to make this the input number type. Now watch what happens here. Let's go ahead and bring this up in Opera. So now we have this type of data entry. Now notice it won't let me go below 0 or above 115, the arrows. Now I could type in a number like 150 and it takes it, but if I use the arrow, it immediately goes down to 115, 114, etc. So we're able to, with min and max, set specific limits on the values that can be in the input field. Pretty neat and pretty useful if you're trying to limit the user's opportunity to make weird errors as they enter data. Now, of course, it's implemented differently in different browsers. If we take a look at Chrome, and pull that over, we have this type of implementation actually pretty similar and fairly functional. If we take a look in Firefox, again, we get the big banana, nothing. So as you use these, just be aware that these new HTML5 fields and new HTML5 controls are available to you, but they don't work well in all the browsers at the current time. As time goes on, you're going to find better and more implementation across the spectrum of web browsers.